Thanksgiving, that time of year when we give thanks for all the blessings we have in our life. It's a time for family, even when they drive you crazy. And of course, it's about the food. Now, in my family, we took Thanksgiving very seriously. Translation, we got out the fine china and we actually sat in the dining room. We got all dressed up and we had intellectual conversations about politics and current events and the latest advances in education. It was all very formal, but the food was delicious. My mother made the best stuffing on the planet. But my favorite thing about Thanksgiving was the 40-pound bowl of mashed potatoes. But this story is really more about the first Thanksgiving I had with my husband's family. They were very different. You see, I knew that I would be on display. Because I was on display. I was that girl, that unknown entity from the other side of town, Scottsdale. It was just a given that I would be a snob and perhaps a spoiled, rotten little rich brat. Rich brat. Yeah, I lived in a one-bedroom apartment with my cat. It was about this big, the apartment, not the cat. And I had just signed my first teaching contract, less than $7,000. Rich girl? Not I. Well, I remember walking into my husband's parents' house, and they had a small dining room table with too many chairs crowded around it. I knew we would be squished. Well, it was filled with food, and a lot of it looked good, and some of it looked different. There was this gelatinous blob in a bowl, and I found out later that was stuffing. But I felt better when I saw the 40-pound bowl of mashed potatoes, and we sat down. Now, in my family, we didn't say grace. Each person went around the table and said exactly what they were thankful for. My husband's family actually said a prayer. Good food, good meat, good God, let's eat. And then my father-in-law picked up a piece of bread, mashed it into his face, stuck his tongue through it, and declared, "Holy bread." And that's when I knew I'd gone to a different planet. Now, see, in my family, we passed plates from right to left in a clockwise pattern around the table. In my husband's family, it was dive in and grab what you want. My husband said, "Dad, may I have a roll, please?" And he launched one across the table. And then he looked at me and I looked at him and I thought, do I have to go out for a pass? Well, he lobbed a roll so high that it grazed the ceiling, and I leaned way over in my chair. I was very athletic back then, and I snagged that roll out of the air. Score one for the girl from Scottsdale. But what I noticed most was the youngest brother was sitting right across the table from me, and he kept grinning at me. He'd look at me, at the centerpiece, me, the centerpiece, me, the centerpiece, back at me, and I thought, do people from Scottsdale eat differently? Or is there something in my teeth? Well, I had been avoiding looking at the centerpiece. You see, it was this small, round glass bowl. It was half filled with water, and floating on the water was a little lily pad, a plastic lily pad with a funky little flower growing in the middle. My mother would have died. Oh, maybe we were snobs. Well, I finally looked at the lily pad, and lying on the lily pad was a little green army man, a sniper on his belly, aiming his gun right at Dad. And then the younger boys started snickering. I started to look around the table. There were little army men everywhere. They were in the stuffing. They were in the gravy bowl, the mashed potatoes. They were underneath pieces of turkey. In the salad, they were everywhere. And no one seemed to notice. Well, I decided I was going to get involved in gravy wars, so I started surreptitiously collecting army men whenever I could grab one, until I had a small platoon right by my plate. I don't remember everything about that meal. After all, it was 40 years ago. I do remember, however, that the only thing my husband's family and mine had in common was the 40 pounds of mashed potatoes in a bowl. And nowadays, I make the best stuffing on the planet. I do. Well, I cemented my acceptance into that family that day when I plucked yet another little army man out of the mashed potatoes, a sniper. And I looked right at that younger brother and I licked every piece of mashed potato off of it. And then I placed that little green dude on the end of my plate, on his belly, pointing his rifle directly at the youngest brother. And with a pew, I won Gravy Wars. Oh yeah.